Hey everybody, what is going on? XLX here, got another Master Duel video for you, and it's Monday, which of course means it is time for another one of our weekly viewer specials. If this is your first rodeo with the viewer special, if you're not familiar with this series, then what we do here every single Monday on the channel is take a look at games from you all, the viewers, as a way to not only see some decks and games that I wouldn't otherwise have access to, but also to, of course, cheer each other on and celebrate our wins and cool decks. If you're interested in getting in on the action, then you're going to want to head down to the description below. One of the links there is going to be an invite link to our Discord server, the HexLexPlex, where under the Master Duel section there's going to be a channel called Viewer Special Submissions. There you can leave your 9-digit player ID, so that way I can view your publicly saved games. As always, please make sure that your ID is entered correctly and that your games are set to public, so that way I am able to view them. If you've got multiple different replays, that is a-okay. You can submit multiple different games. The only thing I ask is that we're not submitting the same game over and over again. Like I said, we do this every Monday. There's only so many games I can feature per video, so if you don't get featured, there is always the next week and the one after that, and so on and so forth. So plenty of opportunities to get featured, but I think that's going to go ahead and do it for our opening spiel, so let's start looking at some of your games. Okay, our first replay comes to us from Biaxol, or Biaxol. Sorry if I mispronounced it on either end of that, but here we have a game with one of the new cards. Or sorry, this is the opponent's deck. We want to look at our deck. So we're playing Centurion Blue-Eyes, which is already a pretty cool combination in and of itself. But furthermore, we are actually playing the new Magistus Chorozo, which has, of course, been released with the newest set. I did actually pull one of these myself. I actually pulled two. I set aside one of them to keep just in case I wanted to try something out with it. And this looks like exactly the kind of deck that would be right up my alley. So very eager to see this. Now, we briefly saw, but it looks like our opponent is going to be playing Blue-Eyes, a fairly standard-looking Blue-Eyes list here. So actually, you know, looking at that list, I think that might actually be card for card the one from the that I think got 44th in the Duels Cup Top 100. Anyway, we shall see how this plays out. All right, looks like we're taking the first turn here. All right, I see Blue-Eyes stuff, I see Centurion stuff, so let's see what the deck can do. We're going to lead with the Maiden of Light. The double call by is pretty great in this hand as well. True Light, set Wishes, and then we're going to activate the Wishes, pitching one of our call bys. Opponent's going to fire off an Ash Blossom. Naturally, we're going to want to use call by here. A little risky. If they have Droll as well, then we'll definitely wish we had that second call by, but it's probably going to be fine. The Secret Rumble might end up being necessary to further extend our plays here, going of course for Roar, as well as Sage with Eyes of Blue. Normal summoning Sage, Sage F, let's add the Effect Veiler. Then we're going to link off Sage for the Spirit with Eyes of Blue. Spirit F's going to add the Mausoleum. And we're going to go for the Mausoleum here, activating the effect to dump a Blue-Eyes into our graveyard. Now we can activate Spirit F to bring back the Blue-Eyes. And this will allow the Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons to summon not just a Blue-Eyes monster, but potentially a monster that mentions Blue-Eyes if we want it to as well. Oh, interesting. Okay, so you might have seen him briefly there. Ah, and that's the link between Blue-Eyes and Centurion. So we can actually send Neo Blue-Eyes Ultimate Dragon from the spell Trap Zone in order to make the Magistus Chorozo, which is wild. I actually didn't know that. That's pretty cool. And that's then how we pivot into the Centurion engine off of the Blue-Eyes stuff. Okay, I see. That's really cool, actually. I like that a lot. And we still have Roar of the Blue-Eyed Dragons. We have not used that yet. We're going to send the Trudea to set up a Trudea in our spell Trap Zone. We're going for just pretty much full Centurion combo at this point. Getting to summon Primera F to add the Wake Up Centurion. Can use that in order to get ourselves a level 8 token. And we can even make another level 12 now, which it looks like it's going to be the Crimson Dragon. Makes sense. And we're actually activating Crimson Dragon F now, and is this going to be for the Okay, it's for Blazer. I wondered for a second if we were actually going to pivot into Neo Ultimate Blue-Eyes there, but... Oh, I get it. And then, yeah, we can use... Okay, so normally... Okay, so in this combo line, we actually opened with Synchro Rumble, but of course, normally you would just search it off the Crimson Dragon anyway. So then we use our leftover... We have Rumble plus Roar of the Blue-Eyed Ones left over to bring back the Maiden plus a Blue-Eyes in order to add the Spirit Dragon to our end board as well. Which will then let us go into the Blue-Eyes Ultimate Dragon as well. Even getting to bin the Phalanx before passing. And of course we can still make another Crimson Dragon with the Primera plus Trudea here as well. That's really, really good. And that could be Sifir, that could be Legacia. Well, Crimson Dragon into Sifir and then Legacia, of course, but... Alright, so now our opponent's doing their Blue-Eyes stuff. They led with Puri Ree's map here. Looks like we're using Blazar to negate their wishes for Eyes of Blue, firing off the Primera and the Trudea in the same chain link. That way we can establish more negates. I imagine Crimson Dragon for Sifir is probably the play here, because then we can use Spirit to go into Ultimate Spirit, and then it won't get pops during the end phase. Plus, of course, the monster negate and destruction protection is relevant during the opponent's turn as well. Alright, there's the Crimson Dragon. Crimson Dragon F on the Auxilia. And sure enough, looks like it is Sifir. And that's going to be it from our opponent. Yeah, so that's really, really cool. Using Magistus Chorozo. I didn't know that you could use the Neo Blue-Eyes Ultimate from the spell Trap Zone to make that. That's very interesting, and it makes the idea of making this combination of cards work a lot better. Because I could even see some situations where you're able to use like a Centurion monster and a Neo Blue-Eyes Ultimate from the spell Trap Zone, potentially. Kind of like a Stink Eyes Doom Dragon scenario. That's really, really cool. Thank you very much for sharing that, Biaxel. And again, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game here. Okay, our next game comes to us from Wub. Wub is playing Fiendsmith Azamina Phantom Knight, which is quite an interesting combination here. I definitely want to get back into Phantom Knight as well, especially with the new Goblin, excuse me, with the new Goblin Biker support. Do note that this replay was submitted before that Goblin Biker stuff was actually released, so before people go to the comments like, why isn't Goblin Biker in this deck? Again, the new Goblin Biker stuff was not out at this point, but oh, you got the Rhoda alt art too, so good. I love the inclusion of the DPE engine here too. Yeah, I think it's quite solid. I actually haven't tried Phantom Knight since Celestial came back, although to be fair, it's like, so with Phantom Knight in particular, it's interesting, right? Like, Celestial Dasher is definitely good here. You could make an argument that Denier Mally would actually still be better in Phantom Knight, potentially, because of the graveyard recursion that it allows you to follow up with. I'm just looking at the list here, because, hang on, let me pull up the message here. Wub said the extra deck is very hard to change, and suggestions would be appreciated. So for the extra deck, if you're looking for room, like if you need more slots, I think that Cicada King is probably the most cuttable card. It's a really good rank 3, don't get me wrong, but if you are looking for more room in the extra deck, I would probably cut Cicada King first. Another thing that I might do if I were you is maybe consider cutting Appaloosa for Access Code Talker. Like, Appaloosa is quite easy to make on turn 1, but at the same time, with a build like this, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to actually close out the game on a follow-up turn, which Access Code would make a lot easier. You can also just cut Access Code for the Cicada King potentially as well, if you wanted to include it. I don't think Access Code is 100% necessary, but I do think it would make closing out duels a little bit easier. That's my experience playing Phantom Knight in general, but I haven't played it in a little bit. I do want to try it again here, though. Oh, I forgot to show the opponent's deck. They're on White Forest Azamina. I think it's a pretty standard list, so... And we're going second, so this is pretty cool. We don't see a ton of going second games. in the viewer special. No hand traps either, all gas. But you know, as much as as much as it can be despairing to go second and not see any hand traps, I actually don't usually think it's that bad. Because if you don't open any hand traps, then ideally you've opened like all gas, and then again, ideally that gas will be enough to just push through the opponent's board. That's not something that I see a lot of discussion about, right? I see a lot of discussion about people talking about using hand traps to stop an opponent's board, but I don't see as much discussion about playing through an established board. I might end up making a video about that. I have to figure out how I would want to structure it, but I see they're going normal summon Sylvie. They got the mover Shilago too, going for tails. Are they making Baron now? That's interesting. Although to be fair, yeah, we can use Howled Azamina F, make Ilya Sylvia, and then still be able to activate Tails because we'll control an illusion monster. And then if they can go for LZ, they can just send the Birth if they really wanted to. Or even this Moria that they reset if they, again, really wanted to. Oh, we also have LZ Azamina, that's right. I think that got added earlier. You guys saw that get added off of, something. Anyway. So yeah, we can just go for Rushia instead of LZ here. For Rasila F. They're choosing to send Birth, which is kind of interesting to me. If you were going to do that, what did they tribute for... Hang on a second. What did they tribute for Deception? Or did they tribute Unicorn? I wasn't paying attention. Interesting, they tributed Dia Bellstar. So I think our opponent actually did misplay there. I think if you were going to get rid of Birth for Rasila, which I don't think that was the misplay, I think the misplay was to have tributed the Dia Bellstar instead of the Unicorn. Although, to be fair, if they hadn't tributed Dia Bellstar, they would have run out of room, and they wouldn't have really been able to synchro with it. I guess it wasn't a misplay then. It was just kind of a weird line of play. Like, sometimes you have to forego being efficient in order to... like, just be able to make, you know, a stronger end board. Like, yeah, it would be more efficient to use the Unicorn. Well, I guess to be fair, too, you don't have to bring the Unicorn back right away. But I guess the issue of not having enough space isn't about the Unicorn so much as the Dia Bellstar just kind of sitting on the field. Although, actually, no, that would have been fine, because we would have had enough room if we would have waited until the point right before we were going to send a Birth. Then we would have had enough room to make the Unicorn, and we also could have used Dia Bellstar to go into this Fiendsmith stuff instead of the Unicorn. So I think our opponent did actually misplay. They could have ended on a Unicorn on this board in addition to whatever else they're going to make. Which, I don't know why they're... Yeah, I wonder why they're using Beatrice to dump a Stellar here and then bring it back with Elf. I mean, I get why a deck would want to do that in general, but our opponent already had access to everything White Forest. I don't really know what this, like, benefits, or how this benefits them. Because they had to forego actually making a Diabell in order to end on all this. Okay, so they actually already had LZ in hand as well. We're making Rubershilago again, and then passing? Yeah, this is a really weird end board. Yeah, our opponent in this situation, like, gave up going into Diabell, as in the level 8 White Forest Synchro monster, just to pivot into Fiendsmith and kind of, like, end on a bunch of, like, monsters that don't do anything instead. Yeah, Celestial, not an ideal draw, nor is having the Takaton Borg in hand, but we have so much gas that it probably actually just doesn't matter. Leading with the Cicada King, that way we can negate stuff like Baron. Not Ilya Sylvia because it does tribute itself, but... And, you know, it's funny too because I think it would be easy to look at this board and see multiple Omni Negates and be like, and the Elf as well, and be like, how am I supposed to beat this? Like, there's 2 Omni Negates, one of them even has target protection, but it's like, I don't know. I don't think, even for a lower power level deck like Phantom Knight, I don't think 2 Negates is a huge hurdle. Besides, I think it's fun to try to make your plays through negates, because then it becomes a lot more skill testing, not only for you, but for your opponent. It's almost like a, when I see my opponent with a couple of negates and I know I can go into like a full combo like Wub is doing here, you know, I tend to get this notion of like, almost wanting to ask my opponent, like, alright, I hope you know what you're doing. Because they're gonna need to. It's always a good feeling. Regardless of if your opponent ends up knowing what they're doing or not, because then when you run into somebody who does know what they're doing, you're like, and then I get like the Gordon Ramsay meme, like, ah, yeah, finally some good food. Alright, so it looks like we're going into our Fiendsmith stuff here. So I noticed this looks like a post-banless build, or at the very least we're not playing Beatrice. So we're not going into that here. And to be fair, like, I mean, Beatrice wouldn't be bad in this deck, don't get me wrong, but like, I guess it would be less about sending one card that's highly impactful, and rather sending whatever card you didn't end up, you know, getting into the graveyard by virtue of your own combo line. Although, to be fair, you could mill something like Ancient Cloak, and then search, and then get your Phantom Knight plays going that way. Wow, Fiendsmith Phantom Knight really is not something I've explored a lot, is it? I really should. Okay, here's our Appaloosa. This is also kind of what I was talking about earlier, when it comes to like Appaloosa versus Access Code Talker. Although I will say for Access Code Talker, I typically do like to have the Nightmare Unicorn. I mean, that is a little bit of slightly outdated tech. Nightmare Unicorn to Access Code isn't as like widely seen or not as powerful as it was certainly upon MD's release, but I think for Phantom Knight specifically, it is still fine for kind of this exact scenario, right? Because like if we go Nightmare Unicorn, well, we probably wouldn't want to activate here, right? Because Baron hasn't used its effect yet. But if we could go into an Access Code here, then we could start popping like the Baron. Access Code doesn't target, so the Elf doesn't matter. We can get rid of the back row, and it'd be a lot easier to swing in for lethal. That's kind of what I was referring to when I was mentioning earlier about potentially using Access Code over Appaloosa. Now, of course, Appaloosa has a lot more applications when going first. I was gonna say then we could cut Cicada King. To be fair, Cicada King did, you know, have some applications for us here on turn 2 as well. There's a lot of, I mean, that's the thing about Phantom Knight, and it's something that Wub, you also highlighted in your message that I read earlier, is this notion that, you know, there's so many different ways to play this deck and to play the extra, that it can be a little overwhelming sometimes trying to figure out exactly what is good. Yeah, so we get to use Cicada, negate the Baron, and then we can DPE to pop it. They're not even going to want to finish out our turn, let alone go into theirs, as they're going to have to play under the Appaloosa, Caesar, Cicada King, and DPE. That is something that I will say, even if you can't like necessarily OTK, there are a lot of situations where you can still set up basically a turn 1 end board going into your opponent's turn 3, and then, you know, with greatly diminished resources, they'll have an even more difficult time playing through it. So very, very good stuff. Thank you for showing that, Wub. That was an excellent duel with a very, very cool deck. We have time for one more, so let's finish off with that one. And our final duel is going to come to us from Toadette, who is playing the new Goblin Biker stuff, and looks like in a dedicated Goblin Biker deck, which is very, very cool. I didn't record my pack openings this time around, but I did open 2 copies of Gone Wild as well as 2 copies of Grand Breakout. So, I think that'll be enough for me to potentially try out the Goblin Biker deck as well. Something that I have a decent bit of interest about going into here. And it looks like our opponent is going to be on the Chimera deck, playing the Evil Hero engine as well. What is this card? Diabolica, the Dragonique General? I've never seen this card before. Sent the graveyard by card effect, special summon from your graveyard of a fiend monster. I see, it's sent to the graveyard by card effect. If this card is in the graveyard by card effect, or a fiend in your graveyard, add it to your hand. Interesting. Okay. So yeah, let's check this one out. Yeah, it's funny because I almost dismantled the Goblin Biker stuff, but then I caught myself and I was like, no, let's actually like do a little bit of research and see how good it is. And yeah, I mean, the 2 new URs are definitely played in Goblin Biker decks. And yeah, it's easy to be like, lol, Goblin Biker, but Goblin Biker Memento is a deck that has actually topped major tournaments in the TCG, so it's worth noting. It's worth keeping an eye on him. Alright, so looks like we're going into the big Gabonga here at the start. We opened Grand Entrance for Mean Merciless, and then Doug Charger adding the Grand Bash as well. Okay, Grand Bash was part of the previous wave of support. Yep, that gives you extra normal summons for Goblin Bikers. Alright, looks like we're pivoting into Xyz Armor stuff. I really like the Xyz Armor engine. It's a nice boost for any rank 3 deck, and it's actually a very solid piece of disruption to end on too. Okay, so we're using Clatter Splooter to bring back the big Gabonga that was used to make Fortress. Now, we're going for Mellow Melody, the Brass Djinn, and then we're going to use that in order to link off into Fiendsmith's Requiem. And this is how, if you're playing a rank 3 deck, you can pivot into Fiendsmith stuff, because Mellow Melody, the Brass Djinn, is a combination of Light and Fiend, an attribute type combination that you'll definitely want to be paying attention to moving forward. So any 2 level 3s can let us go into the Requiem. In all fairness, we could also use Moon of Closed Heaven, but it is really cool that we get to use a rank 3 specifically. Alright, so Engraver plus the Mean Merciless are going to end up making the sequence here. Of course, we're going to use the sequence F in order to fuse. Confuse Mellow Melody plus Requiem. What does Mellow Melody do, actually? Does it have a relevant, like, effect? Detach and target Xyz can make a second attack. So you can just attack twice. Nah. I mean, I guess that is technically more relevant than, what do you call it? The Moon of Closed Heaven effect, which never comes up. Now you might be looking at this end board and think to yourself, like, really, that's it? We're not going to, like, go into a rank 6? Well, we are going to go into a rank 6. We're just going to do it during the opponent's turn. I don't remember exactly with which card we do that with, but we shall see. Alright, so they're going to go Nightmare Apprentice for the Codal. Codal F, pitch in order to add the Gazelle. Upon being normal summoned to Gazelle, F is going to activate. We're going to fire off the Ash Blossom against that. And then also chain full armored Xyz. Opponent's going to chain the Chimera Fusion. And then we have Max C in response to that. They have another Chimera Fusion in response to that. Wow. That's wild. It's wild to me that Chimera Fusion, like, has no restrictions on it. I mean, to be fair, if it were once per turn, the Chimera archetype wouldn't be nearly as good, but... So after making the Chimera King, they're then going to make a Guardian Chimera for the follow-up as well. For Armored Xyz, you might be used to using that to go from your Fortress to your rank 7, but you can actually just perform a regular Xyz summon with that as well. I always forget that. I mean, as you can see here, I was looking at Grand Entrance, like, or not Grand Entrance, the other Goblin Biker card being like, is this how we Xyz on the opponent's turn? No, it's the full Armored Xyz, because, yeah, just as you Xyz summon a monster, and going from 5 to 7 is treated as its own Xyz summon, but you could also just use 2, you know, level 6s to make a rank 6 here to make the Crazy Beast. And then Crazy Beast, of course, has the ability to protect from destruction. By detaching, that triggers the big Gabonga F to attach one of our opponent's monsters to it. And it looks like they don't want to keep playing through all of our Goblin Biker effects. They're just chaining after one after the other during the opponent's turn. Very, very good stuff there. Yeah, I'm very eager to try this out for myself. Thank you very much, Toadette, for sharing, as well as everybody else who shared. And even if you didn't get featured, you know, the act of sharing in and of itself is what makes the viewer special able to even be a thing. So I really do want to thank each and every one of you. Again, even if you didn't get featured, your support is invaluable. So thank you all. That is going to do it for now. Thank you again so very much. Let us move on now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.